I'm gonna go do this.
All right, so we have you. Take and roll here, so we'll get started momentarily.
Good. You met Chris Sullivan. You know, like, I like Chris. I think he's.
So looks like. Okay, welcome everybody. Appreciate you being here this morning. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the Higher Education and Corrections Council meeting. Today is November 9th. The day we waited for a long time. Hopefully our commercials will be different on TV in a little while. We have a good agenda ahead of us. First of all, I want to excuse Representative Snow. He's traveling to see family. He hated to miss this meeting. I hated it too because it was his turn to chair, but he'll make it up another time. Hopefully, he just asked if he can't jump on, he will be on Zoom, but he's in the middle of an airport somewhere. And excuse Roxy Molina, our former student designee, and she's not able to be with us today. Would like to introduce our new council member, Brian Faber of the Department of Corrections Education Specialist. Brian, just take a minute and just give us a little background of where you're from, where you live, what your background is.
Thank you. So originally from Atlanta, Georgia, moved out here to go to school. Met my wife and been here the last 20 years. Background, originally in public education as an instructor and administrator, and then with the juvenile justice system, I worked with Decker Lake, and then recently just moved into UDC. I'm really excited to be here.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And he's day 3 now,
Day
so
3.
be kind to him. We have a lot of questions for you. I told him his only job is to meet people and build relationships right now.
A good start.
Trying.
We've anticipated your arrival, so.
We have. Actually,
Glad to be here.
kind of the people in this room made this all happen. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no pressure or anything.
I feel a little bit.
I have full confidence in him. He's gonna do a great job.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I am going to apply some pressure to UC today, though, before we start. If we can't figure out how to get in a building. Come on. Yeah. There's got to be a better way. I have easier access to the prison.
It's through your backwards.
Yeah. Anyway, Jared, you work on that. When you have like issue meetings or something, it's confusing. So.
Senator, can I make a comment?
Please,
Yeah, as we were doing the presidential search selection, the biggest test was not the interview before 24 board members. It was, can you get into the building?
Let's get past that.
Welcome. Come on in. I don't mean to throw you shit under the bus. Yeah, we gotta be able to get some cards or something.
Well, at least we could lead by example. If we're trying to get access.
There we go.
I think it's if you could just have the doors open for our meetings that are garage facing, that would make a huge difference.
Hi, this is Grace Acosta. I just want to let you know it's hard for us to understand what you guys are talking about when more than one person is speaking. So just let us know when you're actually talking to us, because otherwise I can't understand what's happening. Sorry.
We were just taking care of something that wasn't on the agenda.
Okay, fair enough. I just can't hear. Thank you.
Okay. Those of you who are sitting outside, I don't think we're gonna have a full quorum. Would you guys mind rolling up and go ahead and sit here today? Just move the one space maker. You're welcome at the table. So if you feel more comfortable, that's great there. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. We have minutes from August 24th meeting in front of you. And entertain a motion. If anybody's been able to look at those, entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Anybody make that?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Chris, we have a motion to accept the minutes of August 24th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you. We'll count those as approved unanimously. Now, our next item, we're quickly here, item number 3, review of EDC programming education budget. And I'm gonna make a commitment to everybody that we're gonna keep it on schedule today. So we're actually a little ahead, but Andrea, you have until 9:30 if you need it.
Okay, and I just wanted to, I don't know if I said, if you were able, Jared, to send out our budget. I did open up with this last time we showed up,
Okay, I'm not
and I
sure,
shared it.
I'm not sure how you sent it Friday.
And I'm still not on this, I'm trying to get on the server, so please forgive me while I get that going. I'm just hot spotting, that seems to be going better. I wanted to share the budget with everyone, and I just presented this to, well, I presented it to you guys last time, and then I presented to higher education appropriations. So the question I have is, what detail or what more do you need from me? I put it out there as these are our basic needs in order to run our institution at the level that we want to. There's a breakdown of a few different funding needs that are important. Part of those needs were encompassed in our building block request, which the governor is going to sign off in mid-December, right? Our building block request, I'll take that chunk on first, entails 2 pieces. One of the pieces has to do with tablets and making sure that we have ongoing funding to support the technology that allows our tablets to run, as well as enabling us to have enough tablets for every person in the institution. We currently only have enough tablets for every other individual, so we have tablets being shared, which isn't to say we don't have tablets everywhere. So somebody, an attorney from the Salt Lake School District interviewed us a couple of days ago about whether we were being fair in our treatment of both the men and women at our new facility. And there was allegations that we weren't giving women tablets and they were giving access to educational opportunities or classroom space and things like that. So we walked through that and I told her, no, the women have received tablets, restrictive housing has received tablets, right? So everyone has access to tablets, we just don't have enough of them to go around. And they're becoming increasingly pivotal to so many of the operations that we're trying to achieve. And I think that Dan Powers can attest to, like, you've seen it in action now, right? So you see there's some, we're not just making this up, like we're actually putting content on the tablets and they're getting used.
Where did the remainder of the tablets go to the prison
Say that
this
again?
week? Captain Barrett advised that they received the rest of the tablets this week, that every individual now has a tablet.
Not every individual, because we haven't received the funding for every individual. So what we've done, we've expended all the funding from our federal grant with COVID relief funding that we received, that we purchased the initial tablets on. We've expended that grant into its entirety now. And what remains is necessary. It's pretty much half the population still is without their own personal tablet. So they're sharing tablets at this point. And we have requested with the governor's office to give us enough funding to purchase a tablet for everyone. But more importantly, it's that ongoing funding to support our technology in general. We, unlike other, and I think I've maybe talked to many of you this way, when we had a COVID shutdown, there were so many schools that were able to make that transformative shift towards going home, online learning, because by virtue of having real technology in their hands. And we never had that in the prison. So we were pretty much caught without any of the real equipment and funding necessary to make those technology upgrades. And of course, I was a new director. I started at day 1 of COVID, and we did, every day was the COVID day, right? Like, and it was harrowing. And I have a little bit of PTSD around that, but I won't talk about it. But the point was, my heart was broken because I wanted to make sure that we were continuing educations, and we didn't have the tools we needed to do so. So it became actually a really powerful moment for me to sort of say, okay, how are we going to make this different going forward? And the tablets was low-hanging fruit. And I want to just say that tablets are not the panacea. They provide great learning opportunities for a variety of important interventions. They can be really powerful devices for connectivity, and I want to see them used for telehealth, you know, telemental health, for connecting families, most importantly. But I also know that if you're trying to do a research paper or you're turning in a job application, a tablet's not your best tool, right? I don't think anyone in here would argue that like that they want to do everything on their tablet. It's a fun tool, but another critical component is that we have working computer labs. So one of my requests in the budget was to add a computer lab for the men as well as for the women, and then one in our other facility in CUCF in Central Utah. So that was part of the request as well. Another challenge that we're facing is that we have tutors that help our our people being educated get the assistance they need to do their coursework, right? And this is above bar. And so, but there's some feedback.
Somebody needs to mute on 801-590 there. Thank you.
So we recognize that we pay the least amount for our tutors compared to all the other jobs available in the prison. We pay 75 cents an hour to be a tutor. And you're shaking your head.
It's 40 cents an hour.
40 cents. Oh, I was told 75 cents. And I was like, that is bombastic. What can we do? So we're proposing that we add additional tutors. We did a review of all of our staff that work in educational settings and asked what they need. So we put together a number of tutors that we needed, and we're raising that to $2 an hour. And the reason $2 matters is that's the going competitive rate for a job with somebody that has some experience, right? And I do think that these individuals that are tutors qualify as experienced people, right? Not everyone can teach an algebra class, and I think and I want to be clear, we're not using them as teachers. They're just supplemental to help support our educational needs. So that's another one of the requests that we're putting out there. And then finally, we had a request to include some more administrative support, because as you know, all these people get signed on to a class by virtue of some human signing them up, right? Connecting them. And so we have an OTRAC system that helps us recognize when somebody has identified an educational need and then put them in the appropriate course, right? And that's complicated. It's based on where they're at in their educational trajectory. Are they going for a higher education class? Do they need some technical training or support, right? And what are their interests? And so sort of sussing all of that out, our case managers help us figure it out, but then we need like physical people to help us sign those people up. And so much of that burden has been placed on our correctional staff, our post-certified staff, who have very big jobs of kind of organizing and orchestrating. So I really think it's reasonable to ask for another administrative person who would be a civilian to help us with that. So that's kind of the entirety of our additional educational requests. And then there's some outliers that we need to agree upon here, which is, how do we want to fund education in the correctional environment? We use a telephone surcharge, and we'll talk about that more in depth, but is that going to be a sustainable source going forward? And what, if not, what do we want to do about that? And then there is this piece of it, another piece of it is the promissory note, right? And promissory notes are essentially a contract between the programming division and the individual that wants to take a course to pay back a portion of the cost of that course upon release. I want to be clear that we have, I guess, the authority to go after those funds, but I don't know that in reality we really do. So some people are going to pay it back and some aren't, and I don't think that we're doing a really great job of tracking that, right? And we could, but I don't know that like going after it, the cost of going after it would be worth the reward of getting those funds back. And so I don't know that it's a setting or that we've set up in a way that's really easy to administer and make sense. So we have to have that philosophical conversation.
Some of that was going to change quite a bit with the Pell eligible too.
For sure, and that's huge. And that's the other piece that Brian gets to take on, which is we have federal, funding for qualified individuals for everyone that wants to participate in higher education. And so now the burden shifts on us to make sure they're prepared and ready so they can successfully navigate a higher education, that they're in an, that they have the educational wherewithal to be prepared to be successful in that environment. And I want to just remind everyone that education works in a correctional environment only when we keep it high quality. So when we dumb it down, when we make it less good than any other person that we receive in Utah, we're not going to get the results. So I know there's a lot of challenges here, but I want to just sort of lay the groundwork for my understanding of this and have the conversation, and I welcome your thoughts.
Thank you, Andrea, and that, your last comment is spot on with our recommendations going forward to,
Yeah.
or that it needs to just be a mirror of higher education outside to every extent possible. So, and that's a value not just to the system, but to the students who know they've really earned a degree. Honor that. Okay, any questions on plans or Andrea here?
Sure. I wonder if you have some information, or maybe we can come back to this later if we need to at another meeting, but about what the revenue was like on that telephone surcharge fund.
Yeah, I have that.
And how that was spent out.
So can you grant me a moment? Can we move on the agenda, and then I'm going to present all the details of the telephone surcharge?
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. That's something we want to understand. And is that going away? Is it necessary? Will the Pell replace all that? I think something we need to know. And then another thing, a question of mine during your presentation is, you mentioned what we need to decide what that education funding looks like going forward, but that needs to be laid out. That will be laid out by UDC, right? You'll make the request to the legislature or for your funding as part of your package.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that I'm in process, right? So I've taken step one, which is I've done the portion that I could, that was authorized by my executive team to the governor's office. So that's the tablet portion. The other needs that I raised here, I brought to the attention of higher education appropriations as a member of this council and not in my official role as director of programming, which puts me in an awkward place, but I'm trying to, because I'm appointed, I'm aware of that, you know, and I can't lobby for anything. And also I'm trying to, in a meaningful way, advance the needs of the population that I serve and represent, so that we just have the basics, right? So that's kind of where I'm at.
I think you're good. We have you on that. So
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Has there been any discussion about getting keyboards for the tablets so that students can actually type essays, research papers for higher education purposes? Because I don't know if any of you have tried this on an iPad. Would take forever to write a 10-page research paper.
Yeah, and that was the purpose behind the computer labs. That would be the place where our students would write their papers, right? They would do their research, and they would also engage in probably completing like an exam that has to do with, you know, a certification that they're in, right? Because most exams take place online now. That's come to my attention. There's not a lot of exams that are paper anymore. And then like if you're submitting a resume or you're building a resume, right, you're gonna need that capacity to use a keyboard. So that's why I think the labs are gonna be critical and probably well used by our population.
Do you have a timeline on when those labs will be available?
Well, they're pending funding, so I think we're exploring scrappy ways that we can put labs together, and I know that there is a repository where schools that have antiquated technology put their equipment, and we can get it at a very low cost. But we want to also be mindful that they're probably discarding that equipment because it's antiquated. And I feel like we always just get second-rate things for our population. And sometimes I just want to give people the benefit of getting the kind of equipment that's going to be consistent with what their workplace is going to show them at a certain level, right? Like I think some equipment moves forward really rapidly, and a laptop's a laptop. If it functions well, they can get onto some, Google, Word, whatever, then I think they're gaining those skills that are applicable in their lives, right? I don't want to set them up to fail.
thank you. And we're going to jump forward and let you work on that surcharge.
I just need to get my documents up.
Yeah, no problem. So Representative Ballard, welcome. You're number 4 on the agenda. That for the higher education legislation.
Yes, Jared, do you have a copy of that?
She's coming out with it.
Okay. I wonder if, I think we need that in front of us.
Okay, we're going to move on then. and we'll come back to that. It's being printed as we speak, so we can jump over to item number 5 on the agenda. So this is a council report and recommendation. And really, this is the meat of why we've been meeting and why we're here today as part of recommendation going forward. So you should have this handout. And what we'll do, what I'd like to do is just discuss these items. If some are not ready for recommendations by this commission, then I recommend we move them to a study item down below for the next interim. If we feel like they're all ready, once we flesh this out today, then we'll just check that off and say, yes, these are things we've talked about in the past meetings. This is ready to go. We're solid on it, and we'll make that part of one motion at the end of which ones to accept as recommendation or go forward. So I just said all of that, and we're going to back up because we're going to our legislation.
Do you want to just go ahead and hand that out? Yeah, that's great. Okay, I thought this would be much better for everybody to see in person, for us to talk about. This is the first draft. It's already missing a couple of things, but I thought it would be helpful. If we look at the highlighted provisions, it's an easy way to see what is suggested in here, and I think this helps to answer some of the questions that Andrea had.
Can people online have access to this? Or
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you online? We're going to send an email right now so that you can pull this up and look at it.
This will go to the board.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the highlighted provisions, this talks about some of the answers that Andrea really posed. The first one is actually for this council and higher education to help the jails to know which post-secondary education programs they need to help fulfill. So that really means this council needs to direct what pathways are we offering our state inmates, and what can we do virtually? What is it that the local counties need to follow up with, so that we're not all doing different things in different counties for different state inmates. I think USHE and this council need to take ownership of state inmates regardless of where they are. If they are in our major correctional institutions or if they are in other jails. So I think that's the first thing that's really important that will help our alignment. The second thing is it specifies that inmates participating in this post-secondary education program will pay tuition costs. I don't know why you put this on here. On a deferment plan, let's actually look at it. This would be on lines let me see it. Oh, may at the inmate's discretion. So yeah, so we're taking off the requirement of 50% of the cost at the time of signing up. I think we can figure out through this process, through corrections, through USHE, really mostly through USHE, how to have them pay that. And it may be that the better process, which we already included in HB 194, that the scholarships and applications for federal and state scholarships need to put in place first. And then it may be a process of these inmates giving back, of them being one of the TAs in a class they've already taken or helping. I think we can design a way for them to help the staff needs that we have, to help be a TA. It refreshes the things that they've learned. It gives them that ownership, that confidence of being an assistant in the class and feeling like they're participating in the cost of what their education is. So I think this council can help come up with the definitions of that. The next item is requires the Department of Corrections to pay for essential education materials for those, including those in the county jails. So I think that is line 192. The department shall pay for computers, tablets, and other materials essential to an inmate's education, provided through an accredited post-secondary education program included for inmate housed at the request of the department at a correctional facility or county jail. So I think that puts, just because UDC is able to use those computers or laptops, and iPads for other uses other than just education. They can help them to build their resumes. They can help them to access FaceTime in or online visits with family members. They can use them for logging in to connect with their caseworkers, whatever it is. So it puts in the hands of UDC that responsibility. It doesn't mean that USHE can't help with grants and applications that are for funding those. It just means that they are primarily responsible for making sure that there are some. And I actually really like the idea of the keyboards because it means that any inmate, regardless of where they are, because right now, if you have to wait for the time to get into a lab, it's very limited. So I like the idea of actually providing and helping to get more keyboards for each iPad. I think it's going to be cheaper than requiring a specific computer time, a computer lab, you know, to get access to that. I think that is crucial for test taking. But I think for the assignments and other things, I think the keyboards are going to be much more efficient for the use and things that we have. The last one, so I think this kind of got mixed up. Yes.
Is there any safety or security issues with having keyboards?
It's always a factor. I mean, and that's something that would have to get reviewed by our security officers to approve before we could allow those in the institution. Yeah, because as you know, our tablets they're clear, so you can't hide things in them. They're very durable, so they can be dropped and they're going to be fine, right? So anything we bring in an institution has to have those high standards, which makes them a little more costly and something you can't purchase off the shelf.
I think something though to consider is what's the difference between typing in your finger versus typing in a keyboard? A keyboard doesn't really change access, right? To me, that doesn't change that.
It could be, when I toured one time with the inmate, they will be able to try to access the electronics, stick it out the window and get a reception from a satellite. I mean, I know that it's a security issue
Sure.
But does the keyboard change any of that? I think that's my question. If it's an attached, just QWERTY keyboard, does that actually change access to anything? I don't think it changes.
Yeah, I think it can be done.
Yeah, I don't think it changes access to anything because it's just instead of typing like this, which is accessible, it's just the finger keyboard. It's not changing the access that the iPad is actually granting other than what's there.
Well, and I feel like those are details we can work
Yeah.
This isn't like, but the meat and potatoes of this bill is I have some other potential worries, which is now we have a very large unplanned mandate to provide not only technology to our own institution, but also to the jails, which we contract with. We contract with 20 county jails. Only a portion of that population are, in fact, our people, right? So we're gonna have to sort through that piece. And then kind of what is the details of like, what constitutes providing the educational technology that they need, right?
Yeah, and this only applies to state inmates. So this does not apply to all jail inmates. This is only state inmates. And I think we have access, we have a former inmate that was in a county jail that found the grants for the county jails that actually supplied all the computers and all the iPads. So I think we need to help you to have access to what he helped to apply for that jail for those iPads and those keyboards. So I think we want to provide that access. So I hope that that's going to help make a difference. But I think if they are state inmates, then the state needs to take responsibility for providing the access. If If HB 194 said education as soon as possible, then it's education as soon as possible, regardless of the location, right?
Wouldn't the easier be just no longer move these individuals?
The new facility doesn't have that space. It was designed not to have that space. It's fewer beds. It's designed to contract out. So that's why we need that's why this council, and for all of you who are doing the higher ed tracks, that's why you need to figure out what can be done remotely for their education and for what it is that they need. And then what is it that, because the counties have access to other institutions that are close by, but you need to help direct them. This is what we are able to do. This is what we want you to come in and finish. And it may be that some programs, they have to be transferred back to one of the main two facilities. But I would think that a lot of it could be done remotely, because some inmates are primarily in county jails that are state inmates. So this is opening access for the state inmates.
May I, can I provide some?
Sorry, I have a hand up of Ian Cortez, and if you, and then I'll call on whoever's next.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of thoughts. One of the things that I keep thinking, and as I keep hearing this conversation around apps and technology, we have to be aware of often a lot of the students need to have a formal introduction to technology literacy. So as we're talking about technology, we have to be cognizant that every student knows how to operate a tablet or a computer.
Right.
So so just to put it out there, as we think about this, as we move forward, we talk about, let's keep that in mind around the potential, I guess the potential idea of, I don't know if this is something you put in the bill or this is something that we address here, but maybe funding to create a basic, computer literacy program where students could actually take this course and become a little more confident with technology. The second part that I'm hearing, and I think, I don't know, this has to do with maybe I missed this information or this information has not been last time, but is it, we don't know really what, at least what I'm perceiving, what the new facility has and doesn't have in terms of like space and access. So from my perspective, it seems like we need a detailed report of what the new facility looks like in terms of if there's limited space, what that space looks like, so we can address some of the questions around what educational programs could be, accessed via remote learning. And so yeah, go ahead. So like for me,
Eden, I think you're spot on. I think a subcommittee or a work group from here that can address initially a computer literacy program when they're starting education, and then also what was the second thing?
You were looking at where we could.
The space. Yeah, again, that is something I think a subcommittee with those from USHE in this group who can really define the tracks that are accessible for inmates, what's practical, what can be done online virtually versus or downloaded to an iPad versus what needs to be done in person. I think a work group with these institutions, you need to come up with pathways. We can't really move forward until you direct the pathways that are going to be available.
I agree with the path.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a couple more questions. I guess one is just to clarify, maybe I didn't hear this correctly, but when I'm looking at this bill, especially line 95, when you talk about student success advisors, are you talking about academic counselors within they're going to get hired outside the prison, or are you talking about students who potentially can become student success advisors?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. So are there any other questions from our previous bullet points? Yeah.
Just an amendment to what Dan said about not moving, I understand that the new prison is built for having people moved around, but for those that are enrolled in classes, is there any way to just keep them there?
That is actually now in statute, thanks to HB 194, that corrections has to consider the education programming that they're in before they change them. I think, you know, to all fairness to UDC, really the culture in the past has been safety, corrections. And so HB 194, you know, this year, 2022, is and thanks again, Andrea, really being involved, this is a new culture of really taking into account what's happening academically. So that is now in statute, and I think what this council is doing will help facilitate the plan, right? There hasn't really been, how do we do this, and what academic plan are they on, that they can't do it in the jail, or they can't, you know, that we haven't established that yet. This group needs to really establish that.
And then the second point is in regards to, you discussed a remote learning option. I can offer online classes from Salt Lake Community College through the learning management system that the prison already has in place, but the students need access to some way to type.
Yeah, so I think
That
that's,
goes back to that keyboard issue that was brought up earlier.
I think offline, we can work with Andrea for if you have access to grants or things that she can apply for those keyboards. And for access, I think this group can help in that. And so again, even though this legislation says UDC is responsible for that, that doesn't mean we can't help or that she can't help. I think you know what the needs are, you know where some for education grants, you know how to access those.
I'm going to jump in right here and ask, every institution I know received millions of dollars for COVID funds. Every institution in the state. And I believe most are probably still trying to figure out how to spend all of that. If you haven't, there's a great place to put it. Ask your administration to just ear tag it for higher education, incarceration, move it to get in these items. We might already be able to fund this, at least at one time, and get a lot of this done with what we have.
Was it about, I don't know if this was a sum up comment, but for the county jail issue, but the note that I wrote to myself was that for this to work, we've heard a few other issues, but for this to work, it would depend on having a sufficient base of consistent students that would justify the cost, and also depend on keeping inmates at the same facility through their program where possible. But it seems like if we have in the language as you do at the request of the department, that gives some discretion to figure all that out.
Yep.
It's not requiring us to go out and do what are the 20 county jails. It's not requiring us to go out to 20 county jails and do 20 programs with 16 institutions.
Right.
Let's do it where it works and where it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it probably can work.
I just want to complicate our understanding for a minute, if that's okay. And I wish I wasn't that person, but I am. So when we contract with county jails, the sheriffs run those jails, so we have no authority to dictate what technology they use or whether they're going to accept the technology we suggest. So that's one challenge for us. They do have, many of them already do have technology in place, but it's not the same technology that we have. So we're not on the same page already, which is one of the challenges we face, right? We're using APDS tablets. They have back-end security through APDS, and some of the jails have them, and they're using a different tablet, right? So that's one piece of it. The other piece is that we do have amazing educational space at the new prison, and the challenge hasn't been a lack of educational space as much as it's been a lack of security staffing to open up those spaces and maximally use them. I think the tables are turning now. I think we're seeing more new applicants to go through the certification process to become officers. So if we just be patient, I think we're going to be okay, right? Like, we've definitely done the work to incentivize it. The starting pay is pretty good. We're seeing some recession signals that are bringing people into government jobs again. So that's part of this mix, right? That we just need some help and some patience around. And then I still feel like the moves are a challenge. And you put that language, and we remind officers that language exists in statute, and we're still getting a lot of overrides. And for our part, we're trying to design a system that supports not moving people. So in other words, we're putting it at a high level where we've tried to prioritize what we call a red line in our OTRAC system that ensures that when somebody gets moved, that has to be a deliberate move, and somebody has to sign off and say, I accept that move, right? And I think we need to put a little more skin in it's been very much the case in our past. Our housing strategy is open bed, move them there, right? And now we're trying to move towards a housing strategy, and I believe I have executive support in this, where it's purposeful. And we haven't gotten there. I was just reviewing the data from Davis Technical College about how many people start in a class and how many people actually complete, and it's abysmal. It's frustrating. I think it's a huge waste of taxpayer dollars. And so that is something that we really, and maybe I shouldn't have said that on the record, but it's too late now. I feel like it's unconscionable that we get people started and then we don't complete them, because those certificates could translate into potential jobs for them, or at a minimum, a skill or a sense that they started and completed something, right? I think these people need that. So to the extent we can make it possible, I really want to work on that problem.
So that's why I want to compliment Andrea, because you from UDC are really helping to have these conversations that haven't taken place before. So you brought up a couple of things. One of them is, that's why I have this in front of you. If there's something we need to include for jails to align with for state inmates, then let's just put it in here, right? Regardless of what programs we're doing. And then the second thing that I think is missing in here that I'm adding is that UDC would be required to have some education housing sections, which means that they could, in the open space, actually have the computers just sitting right there in open space as a culture of, you need to work on your assignments, you need to work on the things that you're doing. And that housing section, I know that you can't do it for everybody, but I hope that what that also creates is an incentive in corrections by the inmates to want to be serious about their future, want to take the time to study and have that be part of the culture of what you're creating in the prison. So that is something that I'm adding to this that's not here right now. I want the flexibility for corrections, but I also want to help you create those housing sections of success.
And we have Rich first, and we'll go through. Go ahead, Rich. I was kind of reminded we have 5 minutes on this item. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll go very quick. I just want to thank Andrew in particular for paying attention to this. I know several meetings ago I squawked really hard on that. I guess just two general observations. My experience has been, if the pipe is broken and you stick more water in it, then the more water you stick in doesn't solve the problem. Right? First thing you got to do is get the pipe so it's not leaking. And I think there has to be a prioritization for sending these resources. I don't see how we can work our system just, okay, it's not working places, so let's just get more resources into it. That seems like really kind of, as much as I'd like to do that, I think we've got to be careful for resources. And added to that, scarcity of resources can be used to drive incentives for higher performance. So I guess the question I'd really love to ask is, what prioritization are we giving? What technical colleges are working really well with what local geographies? What behavior of what students in the environments are performing, and it feels like that's where we need to send initial resources and encourage more of that behavior rather than just hoop blank and let everything wink out of the hole. Those are my two comments.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. That was my question I've been hoping to raise for a little while now, and that is this idea of housing the students together. In my mind, that would solve a lot of the things that we're talking about. And we could absolutely put that into function in the new prison system. Right now, our classes are functioning with the males and the general population amongst the two bear units. Well, bear one is where we are housing the rival gang units. And so there's inevitably, there are just challenges there, right? Just even walking into that section, you feel it. There's a tension there. It is difficult. Our classes over in Bear 1 have just been destroyed. We just have not been able to keep students consistently coming there, although they desire that opportunity. They will be locked down because there's gang violence or other things happening there in Bear 1. Whereas Bear 4 is functioning at a very high level. I would think one of the most important things we could do to address this would be indeed that specific language that would require students to be together, particularly in the new prison, because it's an open housing section. We've had students that have been in advanced math classes, for example, and have been unable to study on the housing units because it is so noisy. There's so much noise there. If we could bring them together, those who really wanted to progress and have that higher education, we would avoid the lockdowns. We would also, and on top of that, we would be able to have study sections. We'd be able then to control the technology at a higher efficient level. And in terms of the county jails, if we did that and it was up and running functionally and at a high level, my goodness, we could take the people from the county jails that were state inmates and bring them to the new prison and mix people up that way. Keep people together, for example, in Bear 4, that eradicates so many of our challenges. It's something that I would hope that we could indeed put into language here, and that I think it solves it.
Okay, thank you for the input, and I think we're going to request any more input as well. Go ahead and finish that comment.
I'll just finish this quickly. So lines 94 to 105 are required for the USHU board to hire 2 advisors for each correctional facility, the 2 main ones, and then 2 advisors to assist those that are housed outside in jail entities, in county jails. So I want you to look at this language, and then you can send to me or talk to me afterwards about how I want that flexibility. That if they are not specifically, when Andrea mentioned the challenge of being able to get them in the right classes and get them applied for the right scholarships, whatever it is, that's their role. But if they don't have all the students right now that are needed to do that, then they can help with teaching, they can help with assisting, they can help with designing the pathways, whatever it is you want to do. But USHU will pay for those. USHU will determine which funding source it's going from, who's overseeing them. I want USHU to take accountability for making sure that they can help direct and take the burden off of UDC staff. So.
Can I ask that?
Okay, Rich had a question.
I just would love to ask Andrea, is that helpful? Is that going to actually help things or just confuse things? Again, back to my analogy, we can't just throw resources at it when we got a broken pipe. Let's fix the pipe first. Is that helpful, or are we just plugging, thinking more?
I mean, I don't feel as though we have an abundance of resources. I think we have shown that we have a deficit when it comes to COVID and trying to go online. We didn't have anything in place, right? So we certainly were unprepared in that setting. And inevitably, the correctional environment is one of perpetual lockdown. So this isn't just COVID. This is other reasons that we need technology to help make sure that education as a priority continues, right? So I think we've overlooked the power of technology in this setting, and we definitely need those resources. Now, this other piece, the piece of hiring these additional people, I see them as guidance counselors. We have case managers, but their role is to build a high-quality case action plan. And what that looks like is that we're doing an assessment of an individual's risk, and we're determining the areas in which a person came into our care and custody. And those are called criminogenic risk areas. Once we identify those risk areas, we're going to build a case action plan that helps shore up those areas with the end goal of helping them exit the criminal justice system and never come back. But we don't anticipate they're going to be successful unless we're addressing real risk areas. Education is one of those areas. It's not in the top 4, right? So antisocial behaviors are a big driver of risk, and we need courses that help with that. But the point is, we have case managers that are designing a system that helps address risk. We don't have guidance counselors that ensure people are getting that they're navigating the educational realm super well. And I think those guidance counselors could be a huge benefit to us. I think there's some already baked into the system when we work with Salt Lake Community College or Davis Technical College. There is some guidance counselors there, but probably not enough to go around. And I liken it to when you went to the university, did you ever meet with your guidance counselor to make sure that you're on course to graduate? Well, so that's the point, you know, is that we want to make sure people are on course to graduate. And we need to also design a system that facilitates that graduation, and moving people around isn't going to help them, right? And a guidance counselor is going to not override that problem. So it's all the pieces.
Thanks for the feedback and questions. One more, Eden, you had a question?
Yeah, well, it's more like an additional suggestion. I think last time we met, Representative Ballard made a question, asked a question around the importance of having a position, potentially housing Yushi to address some of the issues that we talked about. And I know that I said that yes, and then we're going to explore those possibilities. I wonder if it's possible to put that here, because here's a few things that I'm thinking, and I will put this on paper and present it hopefully next time we meet. But one thing that was mentioned is pathways, degree pathways and articulations. And I don't see these success advisors being the ones doing this work. And so I believe that would be important to have an individual at USHE who will take care of this. They will look at the degree pathways, will look at articulation agreements, and not just for for this individual program, but for all programs going forward, and also someone that could assist with enrollment and work as a liaison, be a liaison for the Department of Correction with NUC. So I'd like to just share that thought. I wonder if that's possible to include it here, because I see that role very crucial to start mapping those pathways, and to continue map those pathways and to continue work through those pathways as we continue our work here.
Okay, thank you, Eden. And as we wrap that agenda item up, thanks for the input. And anybody who wants to add to this or make suggestions, just a quick note, you probably all know this, but the chief sponsor, this is Representative Ballard's legislation. She has to approve any word change at all. So if you have input, please bring it to her. It's November and legislative session is about 60 days out. We're not far from it. So let's work pathways, housing, make sure we have the right resources. That's what this commission is about. And I love the input. So that's just the last request. Please get with her offline and add or delete or amend anything you feel like she's strong with. Okay. All right. We're going to move to the next item on the agenda. We're going to circle back to you, Andrea, after on telephone surcharge at the end. So let's go to item number 5, our council report and recommendations. Jared, you have about an hour if you need it.
Share it up on the screen here. This is a copy. I've done some highlighting. This will be a working copy as we have a discussion today of our potential annual report. Let's see. Okay. So just as a background here, I've highlighted this part from the statute just to remind us what we're doing in our annual report, what the role of our council here is. And you'll see that it says that we are to advise the Board of Higher Education, the Education Interim Committee, and the Higher Education Appropriations Subcommittee regarding the development and delivery of accredited higher education curriculum incarcerated individuals. So keyword there is advice. Our authority is not to do these things. That's the board's authority or corrections authority or the legislature's authority. Our place is to advise. And the second piece from that language is to provide recommendations to the board and to corrections. So in that spirit, as we go through these recommendations, keep in mind that these are recommendations to the Board of Higher Education. Some of these recommendations will be corrections, And then it will be up to them to take and do the thing. So let's do what we can, encourage them and inform them and have good things happen.
Let me delineate right there, just so that we know too. This could change. So what you just said is in advising and working with and coordinating with UDC. But if Representative Ballard runs a bill that says you shall, that's a different from our commission. She's working in coordination with our committee work, but this can change to not really advising. That's the power of legislation, and working coordinating that with UDC to help them get the right resources by the power of legislation actually puts it at a whole new level. But as a whole here, this might not pass too. So as a whole, we want to advise and guide.
And when these bills pass, that's the legislature telling us what to do. That's talking about so we can advise it. Okay, so in the draft, you'll see that as provided in the statute, we include just a little background of what's going on correctly. Appreciate Andy called out a clarification I need to make on the prison education program. They are not necessarily limited to non-credit higher education. So I'll make a correction on that. I'll make some other corrections on this as well. And then it asks us to talk about our plans here. So just a brief couple of paragraphs on what we've been doing and what we're working on. So the meat of this would be done in our recommendations for the board and the department. And what I've done is tried to capture, based on conversations that we've had in this council meeting, as well as among council members outside the meeting, some of your work groups and other side conversations, and just try to put on here what it seems like we might be ready to recommend or think about recommending. And so it's an opportunity to discuss this. We might find as Senator Owens indicated when we started the meeting that some of these we're not ready to proceed with the recommendation. Maybe we need more study. And if we do, then we'll put them down on this list here for issues for coordination or further study by the council. We'll work on them during the interim, during the session, and come back to those in the springtime. Yeah, this is an opportunity to discuss these issues, decide if we as a council vote on them, want to make these the recommendations that go in the annual report, or modify them or remove them. Is that the right way to proceed?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So should we just take one at a time and go from there?
Let's do that one at a time, and then we'll have discussion about it. And then at the end, we'll draft a motion to accept which one as a group we agree that we want to move forward with that recommendations.
Okay, this first one comes from one of the recommendations of the research work group that reported in 2 meetings last week, I think it was last week, yeah. And that is that we recommend to the Board of Higher Education that they recommend Governor Cox issue a statement that commits Utah institutions to supporting higher education in prison. So thoughts, discussion on that?
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
I guess my one thought there from our research group and kind of conclusion is just emphasizing technical educations and pathways into actual careers. Although it's really great that some of the higher education, university level education, it's just not as viable to actually get employment. And I think the first step needs to be technical education.
With the certifications, stuff like I agree.
Certification,
Good to add.
technical education.
I'm going to summarize that. I think we didn't quite pick it up on the line.
Okay, so yeah, so what Rick's saying is that as we make a recommendation that the governor issue a statement that he commits Utah and its institutions, we want to make sure those institutions aren't just, UC and UTEC are now one.
Yeah.
That they're both emphasized, and possibly UTEC even more with the technical certification that can be had in the setting, maybe more readily. That way.
Yeah, because I've shifted modalities there. As nice it is to get a degree, that's probably not as viable, quickest path to actually self-sustaining as the technical education.
Yes, and that's gonna depend on the inmate and what their level of education is now. We have doctors that are, some with master's degrees, so it'll be with those corrections counselors. But the counselors, I think, can help navigate those paths. Each one.
I think the key is a subgroup, working group. You've got to get together. You've got to create the pathways. You've got to establish with workforce alignment, what can be done online, what needs to be done in person, what the counties need to do. That is the key that we need you to do outside of this meeting.
Okay,
Make sure I got that.
And I'd be, Senator, I'd be curious on your feelings on that matter. And as I look at those recommendations, I can see why we would keep things status quo in essence through 2024. And I'm hopeful that, and as I know you are and others, that Snow will be able to offer those associate's degrees in general education in the Gunnison facility. So maybe we wait till 2024. I guess that's my question, is that language, do you think, not even so much as a senator, but with Snow College, do you think that that's the way we should go? And I guess my follow-up would be, and if that is indeed, in my mind, that would go back to the importance of including language in this bill that would house students together. Because if we're talking, another year and a half or so before Snow is up and going, we have solid community college students down there in Gunnison that have been moved down there. And I'd love to get, if we could get people back up here and then just start in this sense and then build from there, that would work. And that again comes back to the legislation.
All right, number 2.
So I'm wondering your thoughts on it.
Okay, so yes, and you're jumping a little bit to number 2. So we.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were on number 2.
No, you're good. Jared was just making some adjustments.
Yes.
So, but we're gonna start with that in just a second.
Okay.
Thank you. Is everybody good with number 1, with the first recommendation of asking the governor to make a statement?
Making a recommendation.
Making a recommendation. Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay, then.
sorry,
Go ahead.
did anyone get to see my message that I sent where I think sorry, I'm a stickler for terminology and making sure we understand what we're trying to convey to the public. Is that one, we have to be clear of what pathways are and how we see pathways, because I'm a couple of things, and one of the things I'm hearing here is that pathways to employment. But when we also talk about higher education in prison, we're talking about pathways to degrees, right? I'm also talking about not just technical education, but bachelor's degrees. And so I would say that we need to just make sure we're clear with that. That way, when someone reads this, they don't misread it and associate everything with just technical education.
Okay, thank you. I think Jared just put that in there. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that too. One of the things that our research group kind of identified as a best practice is that really successful post-secondary education programs in prisons, kind of all post-secondary education in a prison is post-secondary education in prison. It is not valuable to overvalue a bachelor's degree, to be sure, but it's also problematic to sort of associate prison education exclusively with technical education. So in the interest of the economy of words, we could consider replacing higher with post-secondary if that does some of the job for us. But I agree with Eden that I don't want to kind of unnaturally limit or artificially limit the kind of horizon for incarcerated students.
Okay, good. Thank you for the comment.
I would recommend that these higher ed counselors, that the pathways that are established are basic, really workforce alignment with technical and associate's degree kind of thing. But I think on a one-on-one basis, if there is an inmate who says, I've already started part of my degree and this is what I'm pursuing, then the role of that higher ed counselor is to coordinate with that institution and with that pathway of what classes could be downloaded and worked on that student. That would be the role of the individual personalized bachelor degree, because I don't see that just having a general bachelor degree in communications, for example, is going to benefit anybody. I think it needs to be very specified, and that would be a one-on-one application. This is what I'm interested in, and then that higher ed counselor could help in providing a pathway that is workable within the parameters of the correctional facilities. I don't want to dictate which bachelor's degrees they can and can't do, right? But I think it's such a narrow group of people. It might be 10 students that are applying. Great, let's have those 10 students really be working with that counselor. What is that degree that you're really pursuing? And then go from there, rather than trying to have a blanket communications degree for that really 9 out of the 10 are not interested in.
Chair.
Representative.
I appreciate that we can solve all the problems in our discussion today, but I think if we can limit our focus to what do we want to include on the recommendations and what do we want to have further study on, we might be able to.
And that's where we we need to narrow it down to say, this statement then, is it capturing the work we want to do? And then we'll get into the weeds.
Yeah, we got some of those other issues in the other statements as well.
Okay.
I know I was already excited to jump to it.
Yeah,
We'll get
Do you see we have someone online that's,
So, did
Andy.
somebody have a
That
comment?
was Andy.
yeah.
Go
let's give
ahead.
him
Somebody else want to talk? I don't see a hand up. Anybody online wanted to make a comment? Okay, if everybody can see this, then the language would be, we recommend that Governor Cox makes a statement, the board does, makes a statement, and this kind of leads out for the citizens of the state. The post-secondary education in the system and include collaboration. Okay, so you can read it there. Includes emphasis on all degrees, really. Okay, I think we capture a really good recommendation there. All right, on to number 2.
Okay.
And go ahead and introduce.
Okay, number 2 is just a set of recommendations pertaining to our current program. I think Rich, you made some comments about this, but this is the focus here would be, let's take what we're already doing, support it well, and then let's take some time to figure out some of the other issues. And so in that vein, the first part here would be we would maintain the current programming with the technical education certificate programs that are currently provided by Davis, Snow, and Uinta Basin. B, the general education courses, certificate and associate's degrees that are currently provided by Salt Lake Community College.
I think it's plural degrees, because there's more than one option.
Okay, degrees. Okay. And so to continue to support those for this coming year. C, recommend legislative request to fund what is needed to support current programming. I think saw that there was you've already got a request in, I think, for district habits with some of the other things. But recommend funding for supporting the current programming. For example, are there things that need to be added to provide consistent programming at the women's facility, or are we already there? And D, pause for this year on investing state funds in newer expanded associate or bachelor's degrees, or even other certificate programs. And then that would be pending some evaluation during the coming year and the recommendations.
I think that's where, instead of saying pause this year on investing state funds, I'd rather have the option of, for those 10 students or whatever, to work with the counselors on seeing what pathway options are for them, right? Because it may not be that much more money. It may not, it's just directing them and having the institution help to provide that access. So I don't want to say you can't, right? I want it to be like an application process or for those higher ed counselors to help see what is an option currently. And if they have to say, you know what, that program's not really available, let's look at something else, or do you want to wait? I just want to close the door, with that, I just want these new counselors to take it one case at a time.
So would that be a change on D?
Yeah, it would be a change on D instead of saying pausing, and just utilize higher ed counselors for, what is your recommendation?
This is absolutely a rookie civilian question, but it's sort of an economy of words issue. Do you need D at all?
To say what we're not gonna do.
Yeah.
Because it goes down.
You need to articulate it.
It does go down.
If you don't.
It removes any restriction, so
Yeah.
the guidance counselors there.
Yeah, let's remove that restriction. I just don't know.
Yeah, because we're not recommending the board do this, we're recommending have our group continue working on this.
Yeah, so let's take it off.
It's a good point. Let's remove that. Now back to what you brought up, Dave. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that. When I was before advocating that most of these students, 99%, are just going to be post-second, this is their first introduction to higher ed. And if we follow the rest of the USHE model, then the prison system fall within the service areas of SLIC and SNO. That doesn't mean they're the only providers, but I want to see the students go through them because that's how they'll be tracked. If it's left to 16 institutions, all who are trying to get Pell, that doesn't mean you can't get Pell because you're offering Davis Tech through, but we get it streamlined, and now we can track if they're successful or not, and if they're transferring to another degree, whatever. But I think that's what I asked is you should use this guideline so that we funnel them through the institution. Now, are they going to move to counties? Yes, but they still should stay with as a student of that school, and then partner with other institutions for their programming. Yeah. That's what I was hoping to see.
Yeah. The other advantage to this is that it will tie in perfectly with Deputy Warden Blake Jackson's program that he has been developing that monitors inmates' request and development, so that we'll have all that information and then be able to then just move those who are ready and qualified to start the higher education process and then keep track of it. It ties in very nicely. I will also add to this, and I say this, I have for years have been so excited for the restitution of Pell, and I want to see Weber State coming in. I want to see UVU. I obviously want to see the success of the University of Utah to build upon what they've done. It means a lot to me personally. I just came from Seattle from an academic conference where the accreditation for this new program was discussed in great detail. I will tell you that we are not ready for Pell restitution in this state. That's just the reality of it. We have been operating as a second chance Pell institution, and the requirements have been much less that we've had to face. Moving forward in July, when it comes about, every program will have to qualify with the Department of Education as an official PEP program. And those qualifications include a number of things we don't need to talk about right now. I will just bring up one example. And that is just for accreditation. Accreditors will be coming into the prison and they'll be watching our classes. They'll be meeting with instructors. They'll be taking student feedback. That is part of what's going to happen. And well, right now our college classes in the new prison run from 4 to 7 p.m. So we get a 3-hour block, which covers our needs. But that interferes with feeding men and women in the evening. So we're already talking about corrections that's starting at 4:30 because we've had students choosing food or classes since the new prison opened up. Well, if we move to 4:30, that will solve that. But now we have to end at 7. That's only 2.5 hours. How do we maintain accreditation that way? These are challenges that we are going to face. So the idea that we're going to be able to jump in July and just start running these things is just not realistic. We have a lot of work to do. And so
great insight, and we need the institutions to guide that.
Yeah.
And that's why on this bullet point, and as new programs develop and we all get better, all institutions get better, that can merge, but I think the gatekeeper should be the same as it is with our regional, just so we have that, it's not everybody, you have 2 students in corrections, yeah, I have 10. It can't be that, or we'll never be ready for that.
And Slick will be able to operate for another couple of years as a second chance Pell institution. They have not determined how long, but it will, and therefore the requirements for us will be less. So I do feel like we need this pause to put things in.
Well, let's see there on this, then the board will, and UC will maintain the current programming that you have now. Certifications currently provided, does that limit, or it can be expanded, I guess, general education. So we're taking off the pause, but we recommend, and then C, recommend legislative request of fund, but that's for sure, we need the funding to get the tablets and all the resources, but to get just to where we can function. But are the others appropriate?
And having said that on C with the funding, the Board of Higher Education has already made its request for F24. So certainly we can recommend something, but it may or may not be able to be considered.
But I have a quick clarifying question. I'm not sure if I'm catching everything because there's a lot of voices. So we're number 3. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're now number 2.
Yeah.
Number
Oh,
2.
so number 2. Okay.
There.
You see it there now?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to gather information. Okay.
But basically what we're saying is it's going to just maintain what we already have in place. Don't step back. That's all the statement says.
Yeah, but only 2024 programming will exist as it is now. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
I mean, presumably that encompasses all the.
I mean, as
different
institutions, I think
just
there's probably
added.
some amount of concern with it, since that you will only be a provider
Limited to them.
through 2024.
Take off the through 2024, continue the current programming.
Yeah.
That help.
Yeah.
And
well,
yeah.
It makes me more comfortable.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. About 13 more months for your job.
The proposal that we add this language that we prepare to address like the Pell grant, or we prepare, so it's forward looking, not just for pause doing nothing. Because it's not a matter, it's back to my analogy of plugging the pipe. So let's get the pipe plugged in, then let's get water to it, not just leave the pipe there. But it feels like we're not ready to really do these advanced.
So that would be item C, recommend legislative request to fund what is coming, what second chance Pell, what to support current programming and future.
Yeah, and look forward to some of the future opportunities such as the Pell.
See, what I see being a potential roadblock here is we need to have a very coordinated group and criteria surrounding who's going to be participating in this Pell funding, right? It's coming our way. And we're going to be caught, I think, potentially unaware unless we have some clear guidance about, and I don't think we can exclude any universities, right? I don't think that they have to be qualified. And so we need to be not a gatekeeper, I would say, but we need to hold hands and partner with institutions of higher ed to help them navigate this Pell funding, right? It's new for them. And to make sure, and we have to decide, clearly as an institution, my worry is we'll be overloaded and we won't provide any great education to anyone if we're trying to support everyone. So we probably as an institution or as a higher education council need to say, here's our kind of criteria for how we want to facilitate and support this Pell funding. It looks like providing a high quality education at a reasonable or low cost, right? And maybe there's some benefit given to those who have a history of proven success within the institutional setting, because I think that's a piece that people never consider, right? It's really hard to serve people who are incarcerated.
And that could be one of the roles of the counselors, right? That they are helping to figure out this funding stream, how to apply for it, how to apply for state funds. You can utilize these. And I think that's where you, Sheehan, with your partnership can figure out what do we want these counselors to help to oversee, right? I think that's
well, we have Ryan. Ryan is like We've hired for the first time ever in corrections in the history, somebody that just gets to focus on education full time. And that, I would love to say that's my full-time job, but it's only a small portion of what I do. So I think this is a great first step, right? Somebody that can focus on this. And I would hope that Brian would partner with our.
I've been scribbling notes of what everybody wants. But
also,
your Christmas.
This is a good hire.
Yes, I know, but I will also add that there's guidance at the federal level, so we're not alone here. They're scrambling to help states, and we need to also reach out proactively and get some guidance from them. So.
I wonder if we put that as an individual line item and just say, well, yeah, just a whole new line that says coordinate the federal health.
That's right there on 4.5.
So I can flesh this out a bit, but the concept is, like you said, let's get a subgroup that's gonna work on this. And maybe we just start with the ones that we're already maintaining, Davis and Snow and Slick, and figure out how they can become prison education programs under the federal criteria for health.
And that criteria there's a lot.
It's stringent.
It is stringent, and
it's also not clear.
It is, there'll be institutions that look at it initially and think, oh, let's go do this, and then they're gonna see all that's involved, and they're not gonna want it.
So this would go under the further study and coordination by the council. I don't know if this is a recommendation to go to the board or EDC at this point. We might discover some things along the way that we can take.
But I will be adding in this legislation also to remove the barrier of residency, that we would grant to those incarcerated temporary residency status even to a year after release, so that they don't have those out of state or non-residency, if they can't prove they've had a job or wherever, right? So I want to include that so that the application for the Promise Scholarship and for other institution scholarships are not limited.
Love to high five you on that.
Okay,
Let's do it.
Let's go back here. Good work, everybody. And I love this. And sometimes we're getting into the weeds so deep that this is work that's going to continue on, right? And we can't, in this commission, we're really advising or saying, giving support to UC and to UDC. Go forward and let's figure this out. So I think we're good there. That we continue with these programs, we request funding for it, and figure it out as we go. Okay. So,
on item C, I would suggest, I think we've had some funding requests out there. I don't know if we've got them all in one place, but maybe they go in here to make sure that whatever's already been, whatever has already been identified as the current funding need to support the program, like your.
Sure, and also to do that. I'm sure that we get that provided.
We may or may not be able to get it. This request already got through RFAs, how it works, but.
Sorry, Jared, this was actually Tim's domain. I just want to make sure I'm clear therefore. So our budgetary request should come through then.
It's already,
for the next.
I mean, this would be a recommendation to the Board of Higher Education to either support it or kick it down the road to next year, or because the Board of Higher Education is, at the end of the day, they're making recommendations to the legislature.
Okay, so and we work through you for that?
Yeah, let's at least get them in front of us as far as the council. Yeah. Okay. Good on two.
Good on two.
Number three, the beauty of this is the farther down we get, the more we've already discussed.
Yeah.
So number three, this goes to statutory revisions. And appropriating funds to the legislative request. So again, A, move or add. I don't know if we're ready to move on A, or if we need to, or if this is something that needs further study, but do we need to move or add the current technical education that's being done at Davis and Snow and Uinta Basin that's currently under contract with UDC, and UDC pays them when they come in?
I'm not sure we need a. I think that's already operation of what they're doing, right?
Yeah. My question is, can you do Pell if you're operating that way? And I don't know the answer to that.
It sounds like Pell is going to be another application from what you just said, Dave. So
yeah, I don't
right
think
now,
it should interfere.
Right now, Davis Tech and Snow are pay by corrections to come and offer the education.
And
They don't charge tuition. Maybe you do, I don't know. So there's no Pell, there's no
Davis,
tuition
UB
to.
Tech, and Snow, we have a direct contract with, so we're kind of like the pass-through mechanism. We receive the funding and then well, actually, it's a telephone surcharge. It's not even a legislative funding. It's an account, a restricted account that we have that we can use to pay for technical education, right? So we pay for those contracts through that funding. Now, when we talk about Salt Lake Community College or the University of Utah, they have their own funding sources and we just partner with them directly. So we have two different sort of models for.
Yeah. So I guess where we're going with that is going back to number 2, where we maintain our current programming. The easy thing would be just to continue doing that way. The question is, if we continue doing that way, does Pell give any benefit to the students in those programs or to the overall funding of those programs? Is it something we need to fix this year, or do we study it?
Let's figure that out. I think it's a great question.
All right.
I don't know the answer. That's a complicated
And
question.
does it work
Well,
to
it really depends on if
directly
you're looking at
contract?
minimum promissory note, because currently students are reimbursing for the tuition. You pay us directly and we pay you
Yes.
in return, so. Again, Pell is only designed to supplement the existing funding sources. It's not designed to pay for education.
Right.
That's not the way it works.
So yeah, you have the other promise scholarship and other things that can help.
Right.
Yeah, so use those as well.
So we're not ready to bite that elephant yet, right? Is that what we're thinking?
I can see the benefit to long term, because that would, for example, for Salt Lake Community College, rather than trying to work with legislators every year and stuff like that, just see how much. Tim Sheehan does a great job, but if we need more money and more requests, it would be easier perhaps for us to just work within the institutional requirement. So I see a benefit to it long term. But yeah.
We should decide it more before we're ready.
I think we
maybe
should copy
hold a minute to
offer
get
this
our ducks in
then
line.
from that comment. Let's copy and paste the read to down to future. Let's continue to watch it, study it to future review, because we have to see how this fleshes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Be the remainder of funding from student tuition fees. This is all part of the same package, so I think we need to do the whole thing. And see, what do we use the telephone surcharge account for? That really is all part of the same. And so let's move all of number 3 to.
That's what I
study.
That's what I think we should do. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, it's a moving target right now, so let's watch it for the next year, and then we can come back with another recommendation once we see how it plays out.
And I can add the residency piece, that'll change things too.
Okay. Okay, so number 4 then, so we're gonna hold on to number 3. We're not gonna make that recommendation.
We're gonna work hard on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 4, we recommend that corrections request a legislative appropriation to provide additional tablets. Seems like we've talked a lot about that, and we're ready to make that recommendation.
I have one thing there. Maybe we should also put in there that we prioritize the tablets for those that are actually progressing in education. I know this, I may get
Prioritize for education.
Just prioritize allocation of those who are advancing and succeeding. I found multiple times that sometimes scarce resources can be good because it can be used as a motivation and character drive behavior. So in my estimation, one of the worst things we could do is just, and I know that's what we've talked about, but actually I think it could cause more damage to just pass everyone the tablet, because then there's no incentive for higher outcomes. So
And we
want
want
to be careful that we don't set up, but my big thing is systemic change. What can we do to actually get the system working so the water gets to them to roll, rather than just digging ditches in the middle of the water? So
fair point.
We've got to set systems up here that work, not just throw more resources at it.
Yeah, I think that change. Read that, Rich, and see what you think. Go ahead, Rich.
And we need to add your recommendation, which is we really want USHE, like right now, to reach out to their institutions about COVID funding. If half or all of that request, instead of going to the legislature for new money, we need you immediately to ask your institutions for COVID resources that could be used for this.
It's a great point. It's a very good comment.
I can tell you of one that I'm familiar with, just one account that's in an economic development budget that is 30 grand. That they're just going, how are we gonna spend this in the next 2 weeks? It has to be done by November, so this end of November.
That's what I mean, immediately.
That almost feels like it should be a separate line item, just that recommendation is a very good recommendation.
This part right here.
Yeah.
Asking the institutions to look for COVID funding.
Well, we don't even ask them, instruct them to go over the resources.
Do you have an idea what that cost is or what you're looking at? Or keyboards or?
Yeah, I mean, and I can share it. I hope that we're gonna make sure we can circulate it our entire budget request. It seems like, and if I'm hearing everyone correctly, some things like adding these guidance counselors would need to be added into our request. Is that correct? So we need to keep
That's gonna
expanding
come in
this.
here.
In the U sheet, right? They'll come in
That'll come out of the bill.
Well, right, and historically, when we get a bill like this, and the onus is on the department to come up with, you know, an estimate of the costs it would take to implement it, right? So we'll be doing that.
Yeah, that'll be on your fiscal year.
What's the status, Andrea, for the tablets in the new prison? I know that we're working towards everyone having access, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, we've expended our federal funds. We purchased a tablet for every other individual. There's facial recognition, so that's how it works. They can share a tablet with another person, and it's creating some conflict, to be honest, but it's also kind of working, and it's better than not having it, right? And so far, we haven't restricted it just for those that have educational endeavors, because, I mean, I think we're always trying to balance that access and fairness, right? We want to make sure that everyone has opportunities.
And they use it, the inmates use it for so much more than just
They do.
education. And we have all of the world scripture on there.
Yeah, so that's why it's.
I'm
immediate,
wondering
like
though,
now,
so there was talk about getting the funds so that everyone would have their own individual.
That's our specific building block
And that's
request.
is that your request?
Designated.
Allocated.
No.
I'm being told that there are enough inmates or enough tablets on site that every male inmate at this point will have a tablet within a week. We're only lacking. Well, I'm just concerned that we're asking for funding for something that.
Well, I think it
that
could be the
already
keyboards, I
exists.
think it could be the computers, it could be, right?
We are not, I mean, this was a funding request that we put through the governor's office that we substantiated with all of the documentation, and that Valerie was intrinsic in writing. So if she's reporting that, I would be surprised, because we built this together, Valerie and I, who runs our tablet program.
I'm just.
Okay, well, we will direct USHE to work to find out where we're at with it, with UDC, and find out what resources we already have before we ask for more, so we can adjust that before the session. Okay, so I'm trying to keep us streamlined here. So prioritize, let's see, we were at 3, we eliminated that. 4, we're gonna move it to study 4, we're gonna prioritize existing tablets for those with education. That'd be a high priority. We know that they're used for other things. And then request appropriation or 4.5 is see what we have at USHE first. Okay.
Which I guess would go up here before we request.
Yes. Right. That needs to be ahead of it. Make that request after we learn what COVID funds are out there that could offset it.
Because it'll be over by then.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to what point?
Number 6 now, it used to be number 5. This is the student housing together we've talked about.
Yeah.
Is this a recommendation to UDC? Is that in your power to do? And you can also put it in the bill if you want to legislate it.
Yes, I think we want to work with our education team to flesh out how that might work, including our officers, because obviously they run the institution, they provide all the security, right? So they very much see this as their housing, and they want to be in charge of it. And also we want to make sure that we're providing an environment for people that are engaged in education that's conducive to that education. And I think the 2 struggles we've had is the environment's not conducive, it's very loud. And secondly, that with all the movement going on, people aren't completing. So if we could have housing that was specific we organized around education, I think it could be a really powerful driver of keeping people in a setting where they can complete their classes. But there's a lot of logistical hurdles to get through, and I want to spend some time thinking about that with our team as well as with prison operations.
And to that point, remember, these are recommendations.
Sure. I like it.
Particularly after hearing David's comment and insight, anything that I've heard so far since I've been here that would drive systemic change that would solve it, I think this proposal may be the most significant that would fix the least pipe. I feel strong enough about it. I don't think it should be fifth on the list. I think it should be first or second on the list because it actually drives change. I mean, it feels like I remember, Senator, your first comment when we came in here, it was chasing cats. I remember chasing the cats. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. I don't want to chase cats. Let's just build a chute for the cats. This corrals the cats.
So what we can do as a committee, we're making these recommendations to try to get rails around the cats. This right here, this builds a concrete wall around the cat, you know, and that's what's in this legislation is that what we're recommending is this as you shall.
This is systemic.
Yeah.
That this fixes problems rather than chasing them down. I'd like to propose we move it to at least second position, bump it up to number 2.
Okay, anybody oppose that? Moving it up on a priority, I'm not sure they're listed in priorities, but we can, for emphasis, hey, let's move it up. We'll do that. Thank you.
I love it.
It is, yeah, and we are so grateful to legislators that Andrea and team are welcoming this. They have to do it carefully because they have others they have to answer to, but their hearts are there to see this systemic change. Thank you. And we all, I think, agree that this will change behavior or desires of hopefully inmates. I want to be there. That's how I want to live while I'm incarcerated. Hopefully we see that.
Mike says on number 6, I don't know if you want to speak for yourself, Mike, or I'll read for you from Snow College, Mike Bentley. On number 6, could we add that access is to education facilities and access to advisors and faculty? I don't know, that in there. We could leave that. Not been able to get to students even though they're in education.
Report to where?
So
UDC follow up and report to whom about how it's going? Who do you want them to?
is this on number 6? Or
Yeah, on number 6.
Okay.
Right? Who do you want them to report to about the update on how the access during lockdowns and all that is going? Report where? Does the legislation say education committee, higher ed already? Is that already specified in UCA 641348?
I believe it is.
Okay, so that's already in there.
Appropriations.
Okay. Great.
I think the emphasis here is that
Oh, you're on number 7.
you can have contracts and you still can't access the students in lockdowns, or sometimes it's hard for institutions who don't have any access with their students and they don't know why or for how long it's going to be. It's really hard when you hire people to teach the course. That way, I think Mike getting at. Okay, so
I think so up here. So now we're on number 7 that you're talking about here.
I think we're good on that then.
yeah, I think we're good with 6-7.
7 is just reinforcement of what's already in last year's bill, right?
Mhm.
The inmate access. And so we just want as a council to support and reinforce that, encourage that. And then the last one on, at least on this list for now, is for higher ed to request the legislature to fund and provide, this is a student library. Okay, so you already got a bill there, so we need to support the bill.
Just put support the bill on there.
Yeah. Okay, I'll wordsmith this.
Okay.
Primary responsibility and collaboration with UDC for recruiting and enrolling incarcerated students. I just let this in language from some of our recommendations, the research. Okay, are we good? You want to vote on those or?
Yeah, so
Add some more or?
Could I just maybe suggest, I'd like to throw out No, maybe another one that we might want to consider would be a recommendation on access to modern technology. I know we keep referring back to the tablet system and talking about keyboards, but even if we had the keyboards, the truth is the tablets are not the same thing as using a laptop or a computer. And they won't necessarily have access to everything that students would on the outside if they were taking classes that way. And that will be one of the things that the accreditors look for moving forward. As they go into the prison, they want to see equity between the students in the prison and those outside of it in terms of resources. And the tablets right now are kind of a long ways away from my perspective of being able to answer and address those things. So perhaps maybe another number, I don't know if we want to consider that would suggest weekly access to contemporary computer technology of some sort, not just for doing research papers, but for actually conducting research and learning to use Microsoft Office and PowerPoints and things like that, and sending, all of the things that people do in the real world that the tablets don't necessarily provide.
This is for those in education only?
Well, I'd love to see it for everyone, but if we could start there, I mean, that would be, we've had students that have been since 2017 that have graduated with their associate's degree and have written every single paper by hand. 18 pages of research paper for an anthropology. Oh, year after year, they graduated. It's incredible, but they need something kind of comparable to what happens.
I think if I'm hearing right, what you're saying, Chris, what your work study group brought is it needs to resemble as close as possible the regular education outside. So part of that is access to traditional materials, computers, and as close resemble the higher ed outside the wall.
And we could do that by setting up computer labs. We already have
access to labs,
we could bring in
advisors, all those things.
And so during the week they have not mandatory hours where they can, if they choose to, go there for those things.
Yeah. So there's a couple of barriers I just want to highlight. So yes, I think we can build computer labs. I'm not obviously asking for the funding. However, I want to highlight the really critical funding is just that ongoing support for technology, because we can always, if we're hard scrabbling, we can come up with a computer lab and put it there. But we don't have ongoing funds to then replace those computers. And more importantly, the software, the technology, the APDS contract that we pay for, there's no funding for that, right? We're just kind of pulling it out of tide every year. Hopefully we'll have it each year, but I hate that our funding is subjected to our annual revenues and whether we have it in our budget. So I just want to highlight that. And then, I think that we have, and this just came to my attention, we have an outdated policy around technology. It's 21 years outdated, which tells me something really important. It's not up to pace with modern technology, right? So I immediately put that attention to some people in my division and got a working group together so we can update that policy. My express desire is to make that policy as friendly to inviting online technology within the institution, which is a pretty bold statement. And I say that knowing that we now are sophisticated enough that we know how to make really strong controls in an online environment. And I think we're at a place in society where we can do that successfully and not create new victims or new crimes. But that has to be kept in mind, right? So we need to update our policy. We need to make sure that we have ongoing funding support so that we can have technology. Those are the kind of two pieces.
So I'm gonna bring it in together here then, and I think Jared did a good job of putting this in language there, what you're saying and what you recommended. So UDC and red, UDC provide access to educational tools and technology advisor lab consistent with the institution. Consistent with the institution.
I'll do some more words.
Okay. Consistent with what it looks like.
Kind of same language that we had on the research recommendation.
So thank you for that work. Anything to add?
Total rookie comment / question that we don't need to address. I have this question every time we have this conversation. Is there no one in the Utah Tech Bro community who would be interested in jumping in and partnering on some of this funding.
I think unless you ask, you don't get. I mean, I think if you went to our Silicon Slopes and as they have a board and gathering that they have and just said, hey, would you be willing to fund this? I don't even think the legislature would need to do it. I think they would have ongoing funds that they would figure out. So the question is, can we figure this out before the legislative appropriations?
I know the chair of that very well, so I could go reach out.
So I think you need numbers of what that ongoing technology funding would be.
Yeah.
If you want to just reach this, I'd be happy to do introduction or have a conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want to include me in that conversation and put some muscle into it as well.
So to that, I like that. Can we just go back, Jared, and add, but we do look to COVID funds or other resources, other private, other institutions or companies or corporations that might help us achieve this, at least the first time startup.
I know in our subcommittees, we talk about these organizations that are private, that are already doing and very focused with incredible success. I think we had a couple of these conversations.
Okay.
I think that's really worth reaching out to because their primary motivation is not, it's not profit driven as much as it's actually outcome driven.
Yeah, and we have talked to technical, like some of the Silicon Slopes companies, and they do have philanthropic missions, and they have been willing to donate things like, we'll give you a course, right? Or for a fraction of the normal cost, we'll give you a course to teach your people how to do coding or something like that, right? So I think those opportunities are out there. We just haven't had a person who has the time to go and seek those opportunities. And then with any grant, it's a huge effort. I mean, you have to submit data, you have to spend the money, you have to justify how you spent the money with all the receipts. So every time we invite that source of funding, it's great, but there's a lot of administrative things that have to happen in order to be successful and use those funds well and continue those funds, right? It's just it's a lot of work. It's worth it. I mean, yeah.
Well, and it's the staffing issue as well, because you know, right now we couldn't even have our students together in a classroom setting such as that on computers if they were going, because we'd have to be there with them. Or a representative from Salt Lake Community College, prisoners can't just be there by themselves. So you have the people that run security, and then you have the people that need to be in the class with them. So we are talking about
staffing.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have a comment?
Andrea answered my question.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
Sure, I'm ready to make a recommendation or a motion or.
Good.
I take right there. Motion.
Thank you for all your input. I think that we go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll give it a try at a motion. So I move that we take what we've talked about here today and use that as our report and recommendations, and with discretion for me to work with the chairs on finalizing the language. And then my intent, this is not part of the motion, but my intent would be to have a draft ready by today's Wednesday, right? By Friday, if not sooner, since the report, the committee meets next week. And circulate it out to you for a last look. Hopefully capture the essence of what we talked about here today and make that our report.
Okay, so
the first part of that's the motion.
The motion is to accept these as our recommendation from this committee. I would say that doesn't mean it's one and done. This is a work in progress that we'll be doing for years. But to accept these as our recommendation from this commission going forward for the legislative committee next week, report to education committee.
As well as the board of higher education.
And board of higher education. So that's the motion. Is there any discussion to that motion? Okay. Not seeing any. I'll go ahead and place the motion. All in favor of accepting the ones that we didn't scratch out. Number 3, all of those that are on the screen. Accepting those as our recommendation from this committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to that? Okay, a rule that passes unanimously, and we have our recommendation ready. That was, yes. So that would finished our a big one at our number 5. I am going to pause for a second and see if there is any public comment. If anyone's listening in online, if you would like just raise your hand online, we'll recognize you for public comment. That completed our number 5. So 6, Jared, if you'll let me know if anybody raised their hand. Number 7, we're gonna look at future meetings. But first, I need to back up. Representative Ballard, back up to what we just did.
Yes, you were gonna show us your telephone subscription.
Jared, do you mind pulling it up? I sent you,
We know where it is.
it should be at the top of your inbox because I sent you, already have access to this presentation. I shared it with you when we presented to higher ed appropriations.
All right, so it'll be in my email.
It should be at the top. Yes, I resent it.
And we're right there.
And if we can just go to slide 11, possibly.
There's nothing attached.
Oh.
Oh, that's a different email, I guess.
Yeah, I sent you 2 emails during this meeting. I'm moving parts. You also have it in your Google files. It's UDC Higher Education Appropriations presentation. I just don't know how to share from my laptop.
I'm not real good at it. Do you have access to Zoom?
Sure.
Or you can just
or I
email
can
it
just-
to me again.
I can, or I can just verbally talk through it too. I just thought it would be nice to have the.
She said she just barely sent it to you, so it should be at the top of your inbox.
I'm sending it again.
Right there today, yeah.
I have one that
Share.
says, but I share an electronic copy of the bill.
Share UDC Higher Education Appropriations.
It's my junk mail.
I don't know.
It shouldn't be when you already have.
And for expediency, because we have so many wonderful, important people in this room, one of the funding items I didn't report this morning had to do with cloud storage and email accounts for our population. I think this is going to be a critical need going forward. I explained to the Higher Education Council that most of us navigate through email. We need an email account to hold a job, have a job, do our work, right? And so we want to make sure that we're setting everyone up with an account. I became aware when I met with the Google folks, and they said what they can do essentially is set everyone up with an email account. It's on hold while they're incarcerated, and then they have access to the account once they're released, and they can use that as a professional business account, right? The other thing that's really critical is if we have cloud storage that's attached to those accounts, we can hold all of the credentials we've earned, we can hold their critical like birth certificate and other documents that they're going to need to navigate the world in. And this is a transient population, so the reality is we want to make sure that we're making their lives as easy as possible by having a safe, secure place to get their documentation and to be able to retrieve that from a phone, a laptop, or whatever the case may be. So that's another technology request that's in our budget that I hope you guys agree is worthwhile.
I do.
Okay.
I love your heart in helping just organize that for people transient who find themselves in a tough spot, but now they have the resources so they can get a job. That's a barrier. So if you have that all in place when they're on release,
Yeah. We can upload their resume. It's waiting, you know, they've worked on it while they're incarcerated. It's waiting for them, and they know where it lives, right? It lives in the cloud, so it's not going away. They can modify, update, all of those things.
very proactive. I love it. Is this one
Are you
you
on
want?
Zoom? Do you want to just have them share your screen?
Is this one on in?
You've got it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. So those were what the items that we presented. I want to highlight that we're asking for this money because these are things that we can't use our telephone surcharge account for, right? So we do have funding in our telephone surcharge account. We're not at a negative balance there. We actually have money where we can expand some programming opportunities. But this is sort of our rough estimates of what we think it's going to cost to implement some of these things. And notably that tablet program, that first line, was part of our formal building block request. The other items were not, right? So I just want to highlight that. And if you can go to the next slide. I think this was me walking through all of the pieces and the details. You guys don't want all of that, but I wanted to talk about that was the cloud storage piece.
Okay.
And then if you could talk, do you have a prison education funding? Okay, it's all right. Struggling today with technology. So let me just give you the high level walkthrough. We have
on the Zoom that you can share your, have you got your access on the Zoom?
I don't know, was that the latest one that you pulled up that I shared with you?
No, he just got that online, I think.
Yeah, I don't know where you received it, but the one I shared.
This up on the committee website.
Oh, yeah, so I've updated it for today, but that's okay.
Can you give her access on the Zoom link?
Yeah, if you're in Zoom, are you Zoom?
I'm not. I just don't want to waste people's time trying to make this work. So let's just talk through these things. So most of the funding comes through a telephone surcharge that we talked about. We do have some general fund, education fund, and dedicated credits that we receive, as well as second chance Pell grant funds, right? And then some minimal tuition charges. So that's the complete financial picture of what we offer at UEC in terms of how we pay for all the education that we have. Notably, and I've highlighted this many times today, we don't have ongoing funds for technology. So that's a real obvious deficit in our complete funding picture. And I want to talk about this. So the telephone surcharge, it's a restricted account. A portion of the funds are non-lapsing, so they don't go away, but some of that money will go to a general fund if we don't use it. Historically, we're allowed to collect 1.8 million annually. We've historically done pretty well collecting that full amount. In recent years, we have not collected the full amount because we are migrating towards a tablet approach, which means people aren't making as many phone calls. They're using tablets to connect to their families. I anticipate that trend is going to continue going forward. So we're not in an urgent place yet, but I think it's a good place to start the conversation about the future and where we want to get this funding. We entirely use the funding right now to support our contracts with Davis and the other places that provide technical education. So that money, last year we received 1.5 and we spent 1.4 million of it. So we spent nearly everything that we received. However, I want to highlight that we do have some funds there available. I just don't get to use them in any way that I want. They're restricted to technical education. So what we can do with that money, if we have some extra money there, we can use it to add an additional class. We can invite more technical colleges to participate and draw up some new contracts. But I wanted to not spend money yet until we had the council kind of advise us on where we want to grow and what that looks like. Now, last year I hired an intern. He left us because he did so great. He's like now running a nonprofit. But the point was he spent a sizable amount of his year looking at where we should expand our vocational opportunities. And we really wanted to focus on, so much I think has been driven by outside saying, hey, we have this class, let us teach it. And I think we wanted to take the reins and say, what do our people need to be successful? These are the criteria that we're looking for. We're looking for felon-friendly jobs. We're looking for family-supporting wages, and we're looking for industries that are in a trajectory of growth, not retraction, right? Because I think that's how we tee up our people to succeed if they're trying to get employment. So we wanted to look at some new opportunities, and one of the things that overwhelmingly other states use that is a growth industry is CDL licenses. So that's something on the table for us to expand into. I would recommend that go to Gunnison because Gunnison is where we don't have enough technical opportunities. But so I just wanted to kind of give you guys a more complete picture of the revenue that we have, how we spend it, all sources of revenue. And really, this is our biggest one, is the surcharge.
I don't know if this is what you're looking at, but
That's essentially a skewed version.
Representative?
So total savings at the bottom, what happens to those funds?
So again, they go into our non-lapsing. A portion replenishes our surcharge account and a portion just goes into the general fund.
So that's what I want to ask about.
Yeah.
Because other legislative items, if there is unused funds, we can't just send it back to somebody else. Especially if they're non-lapsing. So I want to know the total savings that go into a general fund. Isn't that supposed to be saved here because it's been designated for education?
Yes, so our average annual savings is $803,000.
That's what I'm asking about. Why that's going into a general fund instead of investing in the future technology or in teachers or in, you know,
So it goes back.
That's what I'm
to
wanting to
the
know.
Administration just reallocates it to
Yeah.
something different.
And maybe what we need to look is at the parameters or restrictions of that account. I mean, we may need some more freedom in how to spend that money, right? Like we could probably use that money to support our ongoing technology needs, but my understanding is it's restricted in a way where we can't use it on that purpose, for that purpose.
but then why can it go into a general fund?
That feels like a place to buy tablets.
Well, that's what I want you to know, that I want you to go
That's
back.
not what it's restricted for. It's restricted for technical education.
So that's what I want at our next meeting. I want you to go back to UDC and inquire about the funding every year, 800,000 on an average that goes to the general fund that's supposed to be utilized for education, supposed to be not, you know, whether it's non-lapsing or dedicated or whatever. I want to know about that $800,000 and why it's going into a general fund instead of staying in education. And do we need to expand those parameters? Great, but it shouldn't, in my mind, I don't see how it could be put into a general fund.
Well, and some of it does, just to be clear, some of it does go back into the PTSA account. So we retain some portion of it and then a portion of it goes into the general fund.
So that's what I want you to come next
Okay.
time and report on.
Sure, and we've been expanding per your bill, expanding opportunities for women. So our contract with Davis is going up, right? So some of this money is gonna get consumed by that contract. But you know, that's good. We're implementing your intention. We're on board. We want the women to have those opportunities.
So, I mean, and if that's, you know, 10 years of $800,000, that's a lot of money that was supposed to be designated to education. That's what I want to hold UDC accountable for. And you're new, it's not you, right? That's why I want to clarify that. But I want UDC to know, as a legislature, for us giving you that money and having in statute that the telephone surcharge is meant for education. I want to know if we, you know, not 30 years, I mean, that'd be great, but I'm talking 10 years of 800 grand on an average that's supposed to be spending for education. So just see what you can prepare for next time, or what accommodations UDC should be making to make up for what was supposed to be spent for education.
That will, on top of that, that will come up in Executive Office of Criminal Justice Appropriations too. So that's gonna need to be explained to that appropriations committee.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal right there.
Okay, thank you for your report, and I think we all are in agreement that whatever funds we can use and continue forward for education, right away. So, okay, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't see any public comment come up. Our future meetings, item number 7 on the agenda. If everyone will look, we're only 15 minutes behind. If you look, we have the 16th report to Education Interim Committee. Everyone is welcome to join that on the state website if you would like, or you can be.
They were just gonna take 5 minutes and just brief them on what we've done, but the report will be provided.
Okay. Go ahead and explain the others then, Jared. November, January, Board of Higher Ed.
We'll be submitting the report at the next.
Okay.
The Board of Higher Ed meeting, or to one of the committees.
All right. And then January through March is the legislative session. By statute, we can't meet as a quorum, this commission. That doesn't mean that we can't have working groups continue to research and continue your work. And we'll have follow-up as we reconvene in interim after the session ends in March. follow up with reports from work groups, annual recommendations, designation of president education program for Pell, and legislative follow-up. So that legislative follow-up, those things will come in our probably April meeting when we meet again. It's kind of common that once the session ends on the first week of March, that legislators get a break for 3 weeks and start usually. So. All right, does anybody have anything to add to our meeting today? Comment?
If they invite us to do some of these items we put on there for further study, we can be working on between now and then. And if you'd like, I'll kind of key those up for the working group to do some follow-up and be ready to come back.
Thank you. And we'll kind of direct that as chairs through Jared to reach out to the working group. So you continue, you don't have a 4-month vacation or 3. We appreciate all that you do. And we know this is a service that you provide, not being paid for this. So thanks for that. Thanks to all of you for your interest and service to this effort. It's big. And there's a lot, you can see there's a lot to it in funding and going forward with Pell and all those things. We'll adjust to it, but now it's encouraging that we have this group to help direct it. So thank you all. Thank you for participating all throughout this interim. I think we've done some great things. We'll continue to work, and if you have input on this bill, get with Representative Ballard. And I will be sponsoring this on the Senate floor as a Senate sponsor, so we're in lockstep on that. Okay, we don't have anything else, then we will take one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, non-debatable. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Turn the lights on.
I know.
Thank you, everybody.
But that's why.
I think it's super.